If you want to dip your toes into writing family histories, why not volunteer for a project that makes the process super easy? Volunteer for a project where your stories are needed and they can offer a tremendous service to people around the United States. Howdy, welcome to Write Your Family Histories. My name is Devin Noel Lee, and I love to teach you how to write your family stories. I spoke to John, founder and director of Stories Behind the Stars. He'll share a few details about his passion project and discuss how we can learn to write stories to assist in this project. I asked John what the mission of Story Behind the Stars was. Here's what he has to say.
The mission of our organization is to write the stories of every one of the World War II fallen who died in World War II. After the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor in 2016, there was lots of stories in the media, newspapers, television, interviewing these survivors in their 90s from Pearl Harbor, and they'd invariably say, well, you're interviewing me, but the real heroes are the guys that didn't make it home. And they didn't get the attention, and obviously they can't. They've been dead for 75, 80 years, but their stories deserve to be remembered.
That is so true. Their stories deserve to be remembered. But writing stories of everyone who died during World War II in the service of the United States, that's an ambitious project. To write about all the fallen during any war, you need a list of names to know which stories to write. One would like to think that getting a list of all the persons who died was easy. Oh, you would be wrong. Don explains.
We did all of the Pearl Harbor names, and you'd think that that's a pretty well-known battle. It gets a lot of attention. You'd think we know how many people died at the Battle of Pearl Harbor. And there was a number that you can find on Wikipedia and most other sites. I think it's 2,335 American servicemen, not including the civilians who died. By the time we were done, there were 6 extra names that we found.
So if the Pearl Harbor list has a few names missing, how did John create a list of fallen for the entire war? Here's what he has to say.
That's a real interesting question. And you think the easy answer would be, well, we just went to the experts, the government, and just got their list of the World War II fallen. And there is no such list. I talked to the state historian there in Utah and asked him if he had a list, and he said he didn't. And I talked to a few other people in the World War II remembrance field, and I soon realized that nobody in the last 80 years has put together a list of all of the people who served and died during World War II. And in the case of Utah, which we did first, we had about these 1,400 names that were from the National Archives. A book that was put together with the Army and Army Air Corps names, and then a second book that was put together for the Navy and the Marines. And between those two books, we have a pretty good list of the World War II fallen, but it's not complete. And in the case of Utah, I think it was February of 1946, the Deseret News put together a whole issue where they listed all the names that they could think of the people who died during World War II that were related to the state of Utah. So I was able to cross-reference that list, and from all other sources besides that, merchant marines, which aren't included in the military list, we ended up with 2,100 names. So about a 30% increase. And we think that's going to be the case in most states.
Do you agree that this greatly contributes to the genealogy and history community? If you do, click the thumbs up button. But I'll tell you I do. First, it ensures that no one is forgotten who gave their lives during World War II. And second, we can memorialize those who gave all. Now, Andy's grandfather served in World War II and passed away in 2014. Fewer men and women who served in the war or their family members are alive to offer memories of those who died nearly 100 years ago.
Right now, it's estimated between 100,000 and 200,000. And within another 10 years, probably based on what happened with our World War I veterans, there aren't going to be any of them left.
So there is a sense of urgency to contribute to the Stories Behind the Stars mission. One thing we talk about here on Write Your Family's History is how will we share our stories with others? The Stories Behind the Stars project has that figured out. Initially, John wrote his stories on a blog, but now check out what the project is doing.
These are all being saved in a common database, and people will be able to use a smartphone app to go to the person's actual gravesite or a memorial, put their name in their phone, and read their story right there.
For decades to come, when folks visit a cemetery and visit the gravestones of fallen World War II servicemen and women, they can stand in the presence of the stone and learn a little bit about that person. This project makes every cemetery with those who gave all an interactive experience. Many people are afraid to write because they don't have formal training in writing. I asked Don about his background and how he began to write these stories.
I was a banker, a financial literacy manager at a bank in Utah, and had to do a lot of writing in the area of writing articles for the bank related to personal finance. So I'm comfortable with writing. Had a long time interest in history, not just military history or World War II history, but history in general. So I thought I'm going to take my interest in writing, and on my lunch break at work, I'm just going to write one a day, the story of someone who served during World War II, didn't make it home, and it happens to be the 100th anniversary of when they were born.
So he did have writing skills within the industry he worked in, and then he leveraged that for what he's doing now. I think it's a great act of service, and it does inspire many of us who've written in various aspects of jobs and careers that we have, or maybe even you've just kept a journal. You have been writing. What I love about this idea is the writing project took him about an hour, or it could be longer. But how does Don write about someone he's never met or is not in his family tree? That seems rather daunting, but apparently that's not the case.
I could find enough information from just Googling and looking at certain locations that I knew there would be military information that I could write basically an obituary for each of these people, one a day.
Don has accomplished a lot in a short amount of time, but he asked us to take us back to the first story he wrote.
I was a total rookie. I knew where to find the information, and I was basically just writing an obituary. So I would say that the early stories, if you were to go back and look on that blog, you'd probably say, wow, these are kind of short. There's not a lot of details there.
Now, Don's first story is short, about 270 words long. From start to finish, including research, that's rather impressive. And there are a few techniques Don utilized that I want to highlight in this story. I love all the qualifiers Don used to write this story. As best we know, for whatever reason. Perhaps. Private Birdski likely. Those are all great clues for a reader that some research was done on Stanley. More is certainly warranted, but here's enough to get us started writing about the stars of this service. On my blog, I've written several articles discussing how to write 600-word essays about the stars in your family tree. That's actually a project honoring our ancestors and was coordinated by the Southern California Genealogical Society. If you're interested in that training, I'll link those posts in the blog post associated with this video, and the link will be in the description box. While the 600-word essays have a lot of varieties and styles, Don is actually after something slightly different, and these are obituary-style essays. But you can incorporate some of the skills I share in those blog posts. What I love about Don's first entry is that he started somewhere and shared it with others. Is it grammatically perfect? According to my Grammarly checker, no. Is it thorough and a page turner? Not really, but that's okay. Because here's an important question. Has it piqued my interest in Private Stanley? Absolutely. So if you're apprehensive about writing stories about your ancestors, please don't be. Imagine the descendants of Stanley's twin brother Leo, 2 older sisters, 2 older brothers, and his younger brother, stumbling across this memorial for their relative and his service. Will they be touched because Don gave of himself to memorialize their relative? I'd like to think so. I'm touched. If you're touched, let me know in the comments section and then like this video. If you look at Don's writing 3 years later, he expanded the story to his average of about 500 words and learned much along the journey. He learned that to do a job well, 2 to 3 hours were needed to research and write. The other tip Don has is about knowing who your audience is and why short stories work for them and help newbie writers.
Because you got to remember, the audience that's reading these stories, they're not sitting down with their iPad in their easy chair reading it. They're reading it on their smartphone outside the cemetery, and maybe it's November. And so they want to be able to get through the story rather quickly, and they're scrolling on their phone. So it can't be super long.
The Stories Behind the Stars group now has additional training to help us write obituary-length articles. I am in love with the wealth of information on their website. Start at the website storiesbehindthestars.org. Click on More, and then come down to Training. Then click Start the Training. Here you'll see the Star Course Boot Camp, which is a great training for how to get started doing this project. If you're new here, click Enroll and join for free this website, and you'll access a wealth of free information. Otherwise, click Login. Then you will access an amazing course to teach you all that you need to know to write for this project. I really like the resource tip sheet on where to find information to write stories. It's like a recipe for researching what you need to write a story. If you watched my training on the easiest way to write a family history, you know I love recipes. While the process is the same for each person, the end stories are different because humans are not all the same. You have to love that. After completing the research, check out this handout called Recommended Stories Behind the Stars. This handout walks you through step by step all that you need to do in order to write about the early life or the educational or personal life, the military career, and so forth. So many wonderful tips to keep you on target and help you accomplish this goal. Then you can start writing a short story of around 500 words. You can write longer stories, particularly if you've included a letter written by the fallen. One touching example is Wallace Zosel.
His wife got pregnant before he left from the States, so he knew he was going to have a son or a daughter, and he ended up being deployed to Normandy, and he decided to write a letter because he knew that there was a chance he wasn't going to be coming back. So he basically wrote a letter to his son. It's almost like he's prescient in what he was predicting would be possible to happen. And he also was pointing out in the letter how much that he didn't want to die, but if he did, it was for the right purpose. And his wife, his widow, ended up keeping that letter and gave it to his son when he graduated from high school. And it's a very touching letter, and it really shows what the world missed by losing these men. But at the same time, they recognized that they were there for a reason.
In a previous video, I talked about different techniques and projects you can use to preserve old letters. The memorials for the fallen World War II soldiers might be a place to preserve some excerpts similar to the emotions shared by Wallace. Another amazing part of the program is they will recommend your first name. The name will be part of a group of men who died in the same bomber plane. An experienced writer will share their story with you for a different person part of that unit. You could utilize much of that story for your own story, especially the details about their unit history and the cause of death. You will then focus on the fallen's pre-war life. You can then submit your first story to a reviewer and receive feedback. This is another thing we talk about often on this channel, the power of beta readers. Beta readers are built into this program, and there are instructions on receiving your first story review in the bootcamp. The review team will read your first story and offer you some feedback on what to improve. There is also a public Facebook group where you can ask questions and receive tips from experienced writers. In addition to the bootcamp, there are training videos with a wealth of information. I also find value in reading some of the posts others have written and find inspiration. On the Stories Behind the Star website, click on More, and then select either Arlington, Pearl Harbor, Utah, or the D-Day Project. The Arlington Project is still underway. By clicking on any of these individuals, you can learn more about them. Some will be on Fold 3, and others will be on the website Together We Serve. Providing service for a project can be very rewarding, but it comes with some concerns. I tell people never put their personal history or genealogy efforts into a site that they can never get their stuff back out of. Additionally, make sure the programs you work with have a focus on preserving for the long haul. Don agrees, and here's what he has to say about what Stories Behind the Stars is doing to preserve all of the efforts from contributors.
What we decided to do is, there's a website that maybe some of your viewers are familiar with called Fold 3. Fold 3 is a subsidiary of Ancestry, and it focuses on military history. We have another partner that we work with called Together We Serve. They do a lot of military remembrance. And right now, I would say maybe 20% of the stories that our writers are doing are on Together We Served, and then they get transferred to Fold 3. So there we have two platforms that will be available to save.
When I started this family history writing channel, I couldn't wait to feature this opportunity for us to develop our skills and serve others simultaneously. We can help Stories Behind the Stars document those 400,000 servicemen and women and try to do it before the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. That date is September 2nd, 2025, so we need to get started. I hope this video has inspired you enough to consider contributing to this project. I plan on assisting during the summer when my kids' schedule is less hectic. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment. Have you heard of this project before? Have you participated? Are you inspired to start? Or what other wonderful volunteer projects do you know about that I should feature in the next video? Now that you've done all of those things to let me know that you enjoyed this video, how about you go watch this next video about the easiest way to write a family history?